Hi, Dennis Weiss for Eagle Communications. Welcome to our town. We're at the Eisenhower Presidential Library. Thank you, Ike. We appreciate the use of your room. But we have a special program for you today about a really new subject that I'm just learning about. It's going to be fun. Ms. Purvis from the Dickinson County Attorney's Office. How are you this morning, Andrea?
I'm great, thank you.
I'm eager to talk to you about restorative, which way do we say it?
It's called restorative justice.
Restorative justice. And Amanda Cormack, volunteer par excellence.
Thank you.
Okay, so you're going to give us the volunteer's perspective of this, but we first have to learn about what we're talking.
So,
explain.
As a county attorney, one of the things that I do is I prosecute juvenile offenders. So these are juveniles who have committed a crime, and traditionally the way that the justice system has worked for juveniles is that they it's kind of a retribution-based system.
Mm-hmm.
So a juvenile is investigated by an officer, the case comes to me, I file a case, then the juvenile has to come to court. And they may have to come to court several times, and then if they're convicted, they are going to be placed on probation or through a court supervised diversion program in which they are supervised, they have to come in every month. And the restorative justice program is trying to get away from the retribution aspect to make a difference in how the juvenile understands how their actions have affected other people. And so it is instead of filing, you can do two things. You can file the case and then send a juvenile through that program as a county attorney, or the court can. Or you can do what we've chosen to do here in Dickinson County, which is not to file the case at all. And the purpose of that is there have been studies that have shown that if a juvenile or a young person is introduced to the court system, having to come to court, it becomes part of their normal life.
Right.
And so that's what we're trying to avoid, and it will increase recidivism.
Wow, I was so intrigued when my wife sent me the note saying that this conversation was going on in our community, and I read the little article in the Abilene Reflector Chronicle, and then I read what Google has to think about that phrase, restorative justice. So intrigued by this. Can I confirm a couple of things in my experience? What you just said about once a juvenile is introduced to a court system, I'm going to put a we-ism on them, things go bad.
Yeah.
It is retribution, legitimate topic in justice,
yes.
right?
Yes.
But the turning of one's life is hard to turn back, in my opinion.
Correct. No, that's correct, and that's kind of my point of view as well. And juveniles, especially, you know, children, their brains are still forming. Your brains are forming up until you're in your 20s. And so I think all of us can look back and see that we've maybe, when we were younger, made some poor choices. In the past, I think that this was probably a more normal way of dealing with things. When, you know, if you threw a ball through your neighbor's window,
right,
then you'd go, you and your parents would go to the neighbor and you would find out some way to make it right. But with the school shootings and things like that, I think the system got more strict and there were more laws that came into play, and I think you lost that personal touch. You know, the interaction between a victim and an offender. And this is, I think, kind of trying to bring that back so that the juvenile learns how their actions affect the individual.
So, boy, you've said some important things that really resonate in my heart, and I want to say it that way, in my heart, because I think that's where the damage is done in people, both the victim of the crime,
yes,
and in this case, a perpetrator. Whatever choices are made, the damage is done inside the heart. It's what they feel and then what they think as they move out through the rest of their life. But a couple of things. It's my opinion that a lot of poor choices are made for juveniles before they threw that all through the window oftentimes, or the other, whatever circumstances. We're facing a crisis in our communities with children who do not have good supervision, who do not have good leadership, who do not have good modeling, who do not have good mentoring, who do not have anybody worried about whether they have food on Friday through Saturday, Sunday, up till Monday at school time. That's a fact.
That is true.
Those children will be highly likely to make that mistake.
Although, while that is true, I believe is true as well, I think that poor choices are part of growing.
They are.
And so this is not a program that's, you know, strictly focused on underprivileged, or
Sure.
This is a program that can affect and help anyone, because kids who commit crimes are not always the poor kids.
Mm-hmm.
It's across the board.
Sure it is.
So,
yeah, absolutely.
and
I don't think that I was speaking about economic levels either. I'm speaking about parenting skills versus none. I don't think that crosses it. I think that crosses economic barriers and lines too.
Yeah.
Maybe there's a statistic, but statistics don't work on TV anyway or radio.
Oh, thank goodness.
But children's hearts do.
Yeah.
The effect on a young person's life is forever. I've had people come up to me, and it doesn't, this is dangerous for me to say, but I'm gonna say it anyway. I think it enhances the conversations, and if somebody wants to take shots at it, they can take a shot at me instead of you. How's that? So whatever one thinks about 0.08 in drunk driving laws over time, you know, that number has changed. I don't think anybody disagrees it's a negative thing. We don't want it in our communities. We don't want it in our lives. And as a legal system, your first duty is to the law, right? So you have laws put in front of you. You don't write
That's
them.
right.
You just
That is
enforce
correct.
them.
That is correct.
So here we are with a choice. We know that we don't want drunk driving in our lives because it takes people's lives. So we know that's bad. But when you put a juvenile into that mix, a drunk driving conviction on a juvenile almost guarantees that they'll never hold a decent job. Almost guarantees, because we wouldn't hire them with that on their record. Most people won't.
Right. And the court has a diversion program as well for juveniles. The program that we are talking about is actually for very specific types of crimes.
Okay, tell me what those is.
Those are crimes where there are identifiable victims, whether that person is individual or a business with an individual as a spokesperson. So like shoplifting.
Right.
And I can give you an example of the
Sure,
ones
please
that we've
do.
actually sent through the program in the last year. We had 6 battery cases go through. There was a false alarm where somebody pulled a fire alarm.
You've never done that, have you?
And that's actually a crime. And so,
I've heard that.
yeah, and so this gave this person the opportunity to go through this program to understand kind of what that person's actions did as far as the fire department being called out and
Yeah,
things like that.
right.
So 3 theft cases, 4 burglary cases, 4 criminal damage to property cases. So those are the types of cases.
With the other thing that really struck my heart, Andrea, is that you're putting victim here, perpetrator here,
Yes.
and they have to talk to one another.
That's
Not
right.
testify against each
That's
other in
right.
court,
That's
but
right.
talk to each
Yes.
other face to face. I think that's an extraordinary positive thing.
And what we have is there's a mediator who facilitates the conversation. And the two of them, the victim has an opportunity and has a way to, their voice can be heard, which is an unusual thing in the criminal justice system. It's not,
Right.
I think, heard enough sometimes. And so the victim has an opportunity for their voice to be heard if they choose to participate. And the offender then in the process gains an understanding of how their actions have affected that person.
Which is really necessary for a change in a life.
Yes.
We adults know that. If we want our life to change in any given interaction we're having here, facing the problem or facing the person we have harmed is the path to the apology.
Yes.
You have to face
Well,
that.
and then what else happens is that they come up with a way to make that victim whole. So that looks very different in each case.
Sure.
Because it's the victim and the offender together that come up with the way the offender can make things right.
That sounds a lot like justice.
Yeah, yeah, it does.
Yeah. So what gave you this? How did this come into your life, and you decided that with all the things that you have on your plate to do, that this was important enough to expend effort, time, and energy to do it?
I have to say I didn't come to it alone. I have a very good friend. Actually, she's the reason I ended up moving to this community.
Okay.
I fell in love with the community while I was in college because she was here and I'd come to visit her.
Sure.
She was very interested in it and had done a lot of research. And I was running for county attorney, and this is my first term. Yeah. So she started sending me things. And I had been the assistant county attorney for a period of time prior to running.
Right.
And I saw the value of this, and I felt like we had an opportunity to bring this to our community. It is county-wide because I am the county attorney.
Right.
So all of the juvenile offenders in the county have an opportunity if they have not been in trouble more than once or twice. So to participate.
You know, if the same old way of doing things is the solution, then we wouldn't have the problem anymore, would we?
That's right.
So something new is always worth considering. This seems to me to be so well thought out of how people actually work in a community.
Yes, and that's the
live
idea.
within a community and heal as a person and make a choice. This seems to have a huge opportunity for positiveness.
Well, and my friend went through the mediation training, and she's our head mediator in the county. She lives in our county, and we are recruiting other people to become mediators for the program. And then also we have volunteers, and the volunteers work in the program when a victim doesn't want to participate, and that's completely up to them.
Sure.
Sometimes their emotions are too raw.
Right.
Sometimes they've moved on, and so if they choose not to participate, we have volunteers that come in, and they're called the Neighborhood Accountability Board.
Okay.
And they come in, and Amanda is one of them.
That's where Amanda Cormack comes in?
Yeah.
Okay.
She's one of our volunteers, and they will take the place of the victim. And usually it's 2 to 3 people. Yeah, she actually knows more about that.
Tell us a little bit about the involvement from the role you hold.
Okay.
And your experience, in fact, with it.
So our mutual friend, Lisa
Yeah.
Eastman, is
Okay.
the one who recruited me to be a part of this program. And so I went through some initial training over in Salina, which is actually, Salina has this program also and has served really as Dickinson County's model for developing our own restorative justice program here. So they offer some great training there, and I went to that to learn how to be, to sit in the victim's chair if the victim is not willing to participate, or sometimes even if the victim is not identifiable as a person.
Right.
Sometimes the offender is, has offended against a school or a business or you know, a building or something, where the owner is maybe absent or something like that. So I sit in the chair with 2 or 3 other volunteers, and we really are there to listen. We want to hear what happened from the offender's point of view. We want to try and think with the mind of the person or the entity who has been offended in that situation. And we really want to ask questions like, how do you think, what sort of impact do you think that's had? What do you think the consequences of your actions have been? What do you think would be an appropriate response to make things whole? And sometimes it's money, you know, sometimes there are damages that need to be paid for. So we might work out a situation where that youth can find a way to earn money to pay back for those damages. Sometimes it's writing a letter of apology. Sometimes it's community service or service in the schools. So we really work with that young person, and typically the parents are also there. So it really is a whole family conversation.
How many of these have you set in?
I want to say 3 or 4.
And I'm not asking names, I'm asking for circumstances.
Sure.
What impacted you? Which one? Role play for our camera here. What impacted you as sitting as a victim? What did you see? What did you hear? Where did justice enter the room?
You know, what I have seen, I will say, and 3 to 4 cases is probably not a very big sampling out of all the ones that we do, but what I have seen are a lot of situations where listening is called for. The law, as you said, is not a human, and it has limitations for specific circumstances. It can't always come in and correctly interpret what has taken place. So what I have seen sitting at that table is that there are some extenuating circumstances or misunderstandings, lack of communication, opportunities to be heard. I think, as Andrea said, victims need to be heard. They need a chance to speak as to what they need to feel whole. And the offender needs to hear that, and the offender also sometimes needs the opportunity to say, this was stupid. What I did was stupid and I wish that I hadn't done it. And just having that opportunity, I think, to be heard on both sides of the table, we all need to feel like we've been heard and respected and given a voice. And I think what this program has seen, not just in our community but in other communities, is that when all of the parties have a chance to speak about what they felt and experienced, and they know that they've been heard and respected as a person, the community benefits.
I agree.
Because there is a relationship that is built there. What this program has demonstrated in other communities as well as ours is that that offender oftentimes becomes more tied into their community and feels that their community has given them a place of support where they didn't feel like they had one before. And their role, their involvement through community service or whatever it may be grows from that point, and they really become a part of the community in a way that we would want as community members to see our young people experience. So that's been my experience, is just to see a very fruitful place for relationship building going into the future, and a community that comes around young people to help them. You know, they say it takes a village to raise a child. And I think sometimes as community members who maybe don't have children or children are grown, it's hard to know how to be a part of that village. And this has been a really powerful place for me to sort of understand or come together with these kids who maybe need a little extra support in learning how they can also be part of the community.
So I've heard that line like 3 times in our last few interviews. It takes a village
Oh,
to
have
raise
you?
a child. It must
I've
be
been
going.
watching. Yeah.
It must be going around again. Can I add to it a bit?
Of course.
I think it, as you demonstrate, you've been in front of our camera for 2 organizations now, just recently, and I think it takes a village to run a village. Inside of that village is children. Inside of that village is victims. Inside of that village is the county prosecutor, the county attorney. Inside that village is the guy running the camera. We're in the Eisenhower Presidential Library. All of that's in our village. I think the dominant logic piece of that is, if you're in a village and you have a choice, you're either helping things or you're not. And you as a volunteer have given not only time, but emotional energy to sit in that chair. You've accepted the burden of responsibility of making a choice and a recommendation back to the prosecutor, I assume is part of the process.
Yes.
And that is a burden to an individual. That is not an easy thing to bear. That's the village taking care of the village.
May I just say, though,
Sure.
it's a joy to me.
Good
I
for
don't
you.
experience it as a burden. It's a joy.
Good for you.
Because I really think that, you know, I was a teenager. We've all been teenagers. We know what that's like. And especially to remember what it's like to be a teenager who's not been heard or who's been misunderstood or not given the chance to make things right. I just really, for whatever reason, have a very passionate feeling that that's how things should be.
That's terrific.
And so I'm delighted to be a part of this program, and there are opportunities for other people to volunteer in the same way that I do, if they also have a heart for that. As Andrea mentioned, there is a need for more trained mediators, and we have a wonderful resource down in Newton. They have a training facility for mediators, and we have other connections there. And I just think I would love to encourage people to be involved in that. This
I'm
can grow
interested.
as big as we allow it to grow, you know.
Yeah, I am. I'm interested because we're talking about juveniles. And I'm not certain that there's a more important thing that we can contribute as individuals in our community to the changed lives of a young person. Whether you're my normal economic revitalization conversation, whether you're talking about dollars and cents produced, the difference is huge between a life wrecked and a life prospered, or whether it's just the value of the quality of a human life that you can't put dollars on. There's no bigger measurement. 2 minutes. Andrea.
Basically, this is a program that's outside my normal county budget.
Okay.
It's something that we have sought community funds for, and we are right now working on one of our community foundation grants.
That'd be good.
We do intend in the fall to apply for another grant, but we also, to be more proactive as far as making it go long term, which I think is very important, by the end of this month, we intend to, a few of us are going to get together and set up a fund through the Community Foundation.
Terrific.
So that people in the community, if they don't want to volunteer their time and they feel strongly about it, they can give that way.
I was going to ask for an action item list, so I think you've given us one. So there is an opportunity for people to help in mentors or advocates and to set in place of a victim, but there's also room in this program for people who want to help fund that, and they can talk to you.
Yes,
Phone
absolutely. 785-263-2646.
263-2646.
Yep, and that is my county. That's the county attorney's office. So.
And I can also tell you that they could walk into the Community Foundation of Dickinson County and talk about, I want to help out Restorative Justice Program, and find somebody to listen there.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's what a great thing you two are doing for us, and I so appreciate you coming to tell us about it, because people will be interested in this. People really do care in our little village
I agree.
about young people,
Yes.
and this has a great hope for people.
Yes.
So fun.
Thank you so
Yes,
much.
yeah, this is positive. I'm Dennis Weiss, I work for Eagle Communications. Andrea Purvis is our county attorney here in Dickinson County, doing great things. Amanda Cormack is sitting here as a volunteer for the Restorative Justice Program, and works to help people grow their financial security over on the corner over there. We're glad you watched it today. Have a great day.